And welcome back to our beautiful studio. We're ready to continue with the next panel discussion. It's going to be an alternative user acquisition done right. Let's welcome our next speakers with its moderator, Guy Bandov, the VP Performance Marketing at StreamElements. Hello, guys. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Yep.
Oh, beautiful. Hello. So good to have you in the studio. How are you today?
Great.
Good.
Great.
Good.
Where are you based? If it's not a secret, I assume different places.
All around Europe. Elena, where are you?
Well, I'm in Penza. It's a small town in Russia.
Oh, hello, Penza. What about you guys?
Tel Aviv. Yeah.
Nice.
Paris on my side. Actually, well, in suburb of Paris.
Wow. That was just sounds fantastic.
And I'm in Israel as well, a bit north of Tel Aviv.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for flying to Hamburg today and joining us for this session. We're very excited to listen to your panel. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the entire teams at the Hamburg Mobile Summit and Winter Night Cruise to host us. And thanks the amazing panel for taking time of their day to tell us more about alternative to user acquisition that was done up until now. I'll start with a quick background and then we'll dive in. We'll want to intros of each one of the rock stars that we have on our panel today. And then deep dive into all those alternative to user acquisition that we're looking at. It's been now more than a decade that especially around mobile game, there's a very professional way to go in and do user acquisition. We all need players. We all need, those players that stays with us more and spend with us more. Huge market, online advertising is, I think today, $450 billion market. And out of that, social media is not that big, actually. If you look at the entire market, we know that there is always that issue of Google and Facebook, I think, covering about 60% of the market. But then there are 40% where we can actually bring gold to our companies, to the games that we manage. And as things progress and more companies are growing, everything's becoming more complicated, more expensive, just less effective. Everybody's talking today about IDFA, creates issues that just add to the pile of issues. We are all looking for additional ways to do user acquisition, to do user acquisition right. And this is what this panel is going to be about. We're going to talk about going beyond the obvious programmatic way of buying users, of optimizing the processes. What are we doing beyond? So we have an amazing panel that's dealing with this every day. I want to start by having you introduce yourself to everybody online. Elena, why won't you start and talk more about, your company, who you are, what you do?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. And I'm Lena. I'm from Bit Games. I'm senior marketing manager, and I'm responsible for user acquisition into our games. It's Guild of Heroes and Storrington Hall. I guess that's it about me.
Perfect. We have two Michaels today, so we're going to divide them to Michael and Mike. Michael Velkus, why won't you start and go and describe yourself, and then we'll go into Mike.
Michael Velks, 12 years in the mobile gaming industry. Today, work with quite a few companies in gaming and e-commerce space. Leading growth for Gigantic these days, which is hit top 100 grossing and top 15 free apps in the US. More or less lives in Tel Aviv. And
doing well.
And friends with Guy.
Here you go. And a great client of ours at StreamElements. Mike from Ubisoft.
Hey there. Well, thanks
Right.
for having me. Quick intro. So I'm a senior social media manager at Ubisoft Mobile Games. So taking care only of the mobile titles. I've been working for 5 years before that in South Korea for marketing agencies and then for mobile publishers. So now it's been 2 years, a bit more than 2 years at Ubisoft, and I take care, among other things, of the paid influence campaigns. So there you go.
Very cool. And quick line about myself. My name is Guy. I'm a VP of Performance Partnership at StreamElements. StreamElement is known for providing the biggest provider of tools for streamers on Twitch and YouTube to enhance the engagement with their audience and reach fame and fortune while they're going in streaming. I'm part of a big team that helps advertisers actually leverage the 1.2 million creators that we work with and the 600 viewers that they have into very meaningful user acquisition campaigns across different type of games. And when I started to speak to a lot of the marketeers on game publishers, whether it's mobile and even PC, I saw that there was a distinct division between user acquisition people, and then there was the media and sometimes growth and sometimes influencer. There's a lot of a lot of names for that, and I wanted to put that out as the first question. What is that difference between that? In your organization, and I know everybody's a bit different. What is the difference between the user acquisition group and then the other, let's call it the media group that's out there? Mike, why won't you start?
Sure. I mean, I won't be able to speak for UA, but if in general you ask me how we view things, it's mostly a matter of KPIs. It's mostly a matter of how we will measure a performing campaign. What is performance, and what do you look at to determine if it works or if it doesn't work? And obviously, after that, we can go into technicalities. And talk about flexibility of how you deploy those campaigns and stuff like that. But that's really the core, is what do you look at to measure the performance? The rest is pretty either obvious or technical. I guess it's pretty much the same for everybody.
Very cool. Lena?
Yes, I am UA first. So for me, it's really hard to move from user acquisition to performance marketing, for example, because all KPIs are pretty clear when you buy something on Facebook or Google, and it's not the same when you work with influencers, because it's hard to measure, it's hard to predict, and even it's hard to test. You can't see exact impact of some campaign because some of them are in organics and in other in paid traffic, so it's really hard to measure.
Yeah, there is that saying that in media half of the budget is going to not to the best place, but you never know which half. So
yes,
that uncertainty is
yes.
definitely an issue. Michael.
My attitude towards that is a little bit different, always been different. I believe that, if you're marketing a game or you're marketing Coca-Cola, it doesn't really matter, you're marketing a brand, and you need to create a brand. Brands don't be created only from looking at ROAS, not only ROI all the time, but brand is more about as much as possible eyeballs watching your brand, your logo, your whatever. So in my opinion, Facebook is cool, Google is cool, but everybody has Facebook and Google, and there's no really, you can be better or worse, but there's no real big advantages in Facebook and Google. And you can see that people are spending today $60,000, $70,000 a day, and it doesn't really, move the needle except creating the ROAS that they need. I like to see it as more as a ECPI in the end. Everything can be measured, but nothing can really be measured down to the needle. So in the end, what you can really measure is your ECPI against your LTV in specific cohorts. Yeah. So rather, I like to look at it in a way, as how the brand is working against the lifetime value. And of course, you need strong product in the beginning, and you need, the KPIs to work in a general base in order to do such a thing, because you don't just throw a brand on a product that doesn't work. That's just throwing out money. But once you know that the brand knows how to return, just looking at ROAS doesn't really take you to the next level. And I always believe that if you have a strong product, you need to take it to the next level. You really need to create a brand around it. So in the end, I call it throwing fires and creating as much as possible fires in a specific area in order to create one big viral fire. If it's top charts, so on.
So thinking that, in that mindset, when you look at, all the other channels to the more programmatic way, how do you look at it strategically in terms of, let's say, budget sizes or usage?
So in the end, ROAS is a tool for me. ROAS is a tool to see how effective my marketing is, but it's not a tool to determine if what we're doing is good or not, because virality takes time. You need to reach at least 6 times an eyeball for someone to really remember your brand. And he won't remember it if he sees it twice or 3 times on Facebook. He needs to see it in as much as possible channels. So I always take Coca-Cola as the best example. You see Coca-Cola everywhere. You see them on TV, you see them on Twitch, you see them on soccer stadiums, you see them on Facebook, you see them in the store, you see them everywhere. And in the end, that's how it gets stuck.
And I'm smiling because yesterday, who was it?
Ronaldo
removed those bottles.
Took away eyeballs.
It made the stock go down. But it is that, everybody's talking about it.
Yes.
Lena, when you're looking at from user acquisition, from your sort of vector into the market, and you go beyond the main ad networks, again, strategically, how are you looking at spending budgets beyond the main ad networks?
So it's always 70. Sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
I want to say that the case with Coca-Cola is great, and Coca-Cola is huge, but we are much smaller than Coca-Cola and probably much smaller than everybody else. And for us, ROAS is really important. So we try to measure all channels with ROAS, because we don't have so huge budget to measure impact even on influencers. So we try to measure impact on CPI. For example, when we run some advertising with influencers, we see our CPI level falls down, and it's pretty good for user acquisition as well. So we try to measure not impact exactly, but how it influenced everything.
Right. Sort of move the needle. And what channels do you prefer to go to try to do that? Like, if you go beyond Facebook as an example.
Well, our main channels are Facebook, Google, and Unity, but we also look for influencers like StreamElements, like working with the YouTube bloggers, especially in post-IDFA era, when we have not so much stuff to measure our performance, for example, for our iOS campaigns. And right now it's much more interesting to work with influencers because we can measure it even more than our traditional campaigns.
Which is absolutely crazy with all the MMP technology that's out there. Mike, you're actually outside of this Facebook and Google market. What you probably just zooming in on all the alternatives. What are the channels you're looking at when you go out and activate and bring in users from all the channels out there?
Right. So just to clarify, we obviously also use Facebook and Google. This is more like viewed under, let's say outreach to the communities, dev work and stuff like that. So obviously we do amplification campaigns, but this is like, it's pretty simple. It's really simple to execute, simple to follow up and then measure the ROAS if needed. For pure influence, I'd say before meeting with you guys, YouTube was sort of the go-to platform because we were used to VOD and working on simple models split between PPL and dedicated. It's pure. It's exactly that, buying a space to be visible, to get as many eyeballs in front of the screen and get your brand seen, and try to be as clever as possible when you try to introduce it. You know, even if it's like a 30-second ad space on the 20-minute video, you have to do it in a clever way so people will remember you and you don't waste your money and you strike them. Discussing with you guys, we started looking into Twitch, which initially was not a good market for us because we considered that the alignment between Twitch viewers and mobile players was not exactly right. And actually it proved pretty wrong because we've seen in the past 1 to 2 years some very great interactions. And the other aspect is that we kind of dropped the VOD part to go more onto a live activation format where we could have people, viewers, audiences interact with the influencer and challenge each other, join each other, have some real live interactions to create this kind of link between them and between the audiences and our brand. And I must say this has been impacting quite strongly KPIs such as retention, monetization and stuff like that. We're going much better down the funnel with those channels because we're reaching them in a more in a deeper way, let's say.
So I mean, this media, and thank you for mentioning us, but in general, we are seeing that the alternative medias are sort of joining the pack in terms of being more trackable, right? And when you track, you can optimize and hopefully you can scale without hurting results. Those are pretty critical, although those started at user acquisition. Do you find that this is helpful for you? This, the trust level internally on a marketing side is growing and you're able to divert, or the company is able to divert more marketing dollars into those alternative channels versus the sort of safer Facebook and Google?
It's a long ongoing conversation that would depend on our management style. I must say that since we have our new management in place for the past months, the needle did go further into branding and looking for innovations and a bit less standard things. So that's very encouraging. And going through those campaigns with you guys or through any sort of more community-oriented activations did prove that we managed to handle better our campaigns, to be more on point for return on ad spend and bringing more qualitative users. So in a sense, we're not competing against other acquisition channels, but we're trying to find our niche and to find what is the right balance between pure UA and pure branding. And I guess you guys will talk about that later on, but it's a fine line and we're still looking for it and we're pushing all the time.
Lena, do you see the same thing? I mean, again, you're coming from user acquisition, but do you see those tools coming in, helping you in sort of opening your way of doing business to more channels?
Yes, when we launch our games, we usually look for traditional channels, but when we should scale or when we want to find some new possibilities for us, we usually look for influence marketing because sometimes it can give us super cheap installs, super cheap purchases. And yes, Facebook and Google are more stable, but in compare to some other campaigns, they can be like super successful. So they are unstable, and sometimes it's really good because it's unstable can be much more better than stable
the risk.
campaigns. Yes,
the risk actually sometimes pays off.
Yes.
Michael, and for you, I think again with that broader strategy, and sometimes I've seen the term brandformance, which is really I think the way that you communicated before. are you looking always to sort of get the goal of brand awareness, in
Always.
high level, but also performance
Always.
with your channels?
Always. I think already for 10 years it's been that way. If you took from the first product that I promoted, as you know, the name still works. You still remember things. Everybody does, because it was in the end, very in your face, all over, viral, country by country. Always looking at trying to create a community, that the community will bring retention, the community will bring monetization, the community will drive everything. So I think marketing today has a little bit lost it. And I actually, as you know, I was very happy with the IDFA 14. Because it took away all the data, took the marketing back to people that care about marketing, and took it away from like an analyst kind of way of looking at stuff. Of course, you do need, as I said, you always need to be as trackable as possible. But there's stuff that that money cannot buy, that tracking cannot buy. We look at today at Clubhouse, for example, not even StreamElements that we, you all that we're growing with you guys and looking for production. But even that StreamElements is traffic that you cannot buy in different places. It's the small communities or the large communities of people that follow these specific people, that you cannot reach them on Facebook. They don't care about their ads on Facebook. And in order to get to the pocket holes, you have to get out of Facebook and Google. Because as I said, that's the normality. That's like the default. Like you're mandatory to be on Facebook and Google, but I think that it's a sin to be only on Facebook and Google, and always to try and look for those different small communities that can, I always explain it as if there's a field of thorns, it's burning a few thorns on the outside of the circle in order to
start the fire.
In order to start the fire. So the only way to burn those small thorn fields is through those small communities, is through that funny two guys on Twitch, is through that Clubhouse guy that has 100,000 followers that no one knows about from other places. And on top of that, the large fire will come on Facebook and Google, and then everybody will know. But to crack the thing, to crack the real fire, you have to touch those small communities, and that doesn't exist on Facebook or Google.
I love the word communities here, because we see that as well, and we see a lot of time, a lot of those bigger fire start with smaller communities and influencers, not necessarily with the biggest followers, but I would say mid-sized followings or mid-sized audiences. They convert the best. They really trust the influencer, the talent that they will be following, and if that talent is playing a game or talking about a service, and everybody will go there to check it out. And I wonder if you and I keep this sort of an open question, if you see the same in general, that you need to move not away, but you really need to put a bit more stress or more budget around creating bigger trust, bigger motivation through influencers, especially to the younger sort of Gen Z audiences. Do we need to move from those generic video ads into actual people that tell the audience, look, this is great, you love me, you trust me, go check it out? I mean, is that a trend that is happening now for you, Lena, as an example?
Yes, for me, I can see it right now, and as example is our company, because we had an experience working with influence on YouTube with the Guild of Heroes, and I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago. It was unsuccessful at all, and we would like to forget about all these bloggers and influencers and so on. And after we launched our new title, Stormington Hall, we also tried YouTube bloggers, and it's such a different story, because we can see the performance there is much better, and people that came from YouTube bloggers, Well, yes.
Convert better.
Yes,
And I'm sure,
and they have better retention, so it's pretty much more interesting to work with these channels than to work with the traditional ones.
I was overwhelmed when, I've seen that again and again. And, Mike, Ubisoft, you cover a lot of IPs and come from a house that is running games and game marketing for generations now for, I want to say 20 more years. Do you see that shift also internally as a strategy, moving into, those influencers, those talents, those, people who are actually managing communities and making them follow them?
Certainly, we don't really have a choice here. Obviously, we will keep on working with macro influencers when you need to, get the big guns out and get some visibility for creative activation, something big. But when you, on the long run, and when you're looking for a game that will, live for many cycles, what you're looking for is attachment. You're looking for authenticity, and not that you can't find that with macro, but you can't really create it. It's much harder. And by focusing with community leaders, with other creators, small size, mid size, we have creators that have very strong relation and strong trust between them and their audiences. There's this strong relation. So they know they won't be lied to, and even further than that, we also know that we are much more on point, where we know that we're talking to a much precise audience. So that's also very helpful. We're not talking cooking when the guy is coming for cars. But other than that, yeah, that's authenticity, and that's where we find it. And indeed, we're looking more and more to build that ourselves, or to communicate with creators that have this relationship.
And Michael, I know that Gigantic for Chloe is so success with creators. Some activated directly. You've over the years were able to manage and bring on board different type of creators to promote Chloe. How did that work for you? Where did you find the best success?
We do quite a lot of familiar faces, and then do that on UA. So a lot of time, I call it an API between the teams. So we have a creator success employee that she takes care of all the social media, all the creators, and especially micro influencers. We have a girl that works on macro influencers, which are larger, bigger faces, known faces. We brought a few weeks ago all the cast of Beverly Hills 90210, for example. A little bit old, but I believe that the familiar faces stay forever. And the price it gets lower as far they are in the thing. So it was a good catch. So what we do is we care that all the time social media, UA, and creators work together. So what does that mean? That creators are always every month we bring 2 to 3 familiar faces. And then from that side, we make those about 20 different ads. So we're always refreshing creators with familiar faces. And then that goes into a cycle where we go into all the social media, and then everything works together in the part that, creators feed UA, creators feed new audiences. The UA feeds the to understand who works better, and we use the data from UA to understand which faces would work better for us. So all our team is always connected into one cycle of one goal, which is a eCPI, and try and get as much as possible downloads for the specific budget that we have.
Right.
Of course,
and that's actually a huge challenge to have that sync up, right?
I call it API plan in the team.
Right.
Have an API in the team that always the content, the streaming, and the data is moving between everybody, and each one uses that content from his side to make the best performance and activity.
I know it's very challenging. When I'm working with marketing teams through StreamElements, and sometimes our point of contact is coming from, streamers or media side, and sometimes it's from user acquisition. It is, for a lot of people, it is comfortable, and they're already used to the methodology of working with, let's say, with user acquisition or more programmatic channels. But when it comes to buying this very specific media, in general, it's more challenging, and nothing is easy. And at least we'll tell our boss that nothing is easy. What are the biggest challenges when you are going out and trying to bring in those influencers that you see? What are the sort of biggest hurdles that allow you to make good versus bad activation, or at least lower the overhead to sort of manage that type of media on an ongoing basis? Lena, what were your challenges when you were looking at Twitch or YouTube as a media?
For me, the biggest challenge is to understand which influence will have better results and which not, because it's really hard to understand, and it's not only depends on the content they review, but on some other hidden metrics. So you can predict if the influence gonna be good or not before you try, and even after you try, it doesn't mean that you can't work with him. Maybe some video wasn't as good as it could be. So it's really hard to predict, but we try.
Yeah. Mike, for you, what are the biggest challenges and maybe lessons learned? What would be the tips that you would give somebody when looking at these media, influencers and Twitch and YouTube?
Yeah, so there are two angles. The first one on the organization part, that's the alignment to which I was referring, making sure that we find the right alignment between the game, the creator, and the audiences, and that once you have that, making sure that the activation is on point when you look at what the audience is expecting. Just fulfilling the expectation of the audiences. You have a limited amount of time with those guys, especially based on their attention span and how many other games will be displayed, et cetera, et cetera. So based on that, you have to reproduce it with X amount of creators times X amount of waves. It's very hard to know if you're doing well. It's hard to know if you're succeeding and why. So you have to really dissect each of those activations and making sure that you understand what went well and what did not. And then the last aspect, which is we go down to measuring, is and Elena talked about that earlier, is a lot of what's happening is happening on the organic side. So making sure that we're able to understand what's happening and that we can see it and that we don't have too much noise on the side, because when we work around launches, so many things are happening. You have paid media, UA, PR. So yeah, you're going to be competing on the organic part of the things. So that's another hurdle that we're still working on trying to fix or to better understand.
When you look at YouTube or Twitch, do you have like a North Star KPI that you'll be looking at, or you're trying to look at the bigger picture?
Overall, I like to start with branding KPIs, where I want to make sure that everything has been received perfectly. I want to make sure that I had views, and I want to make sure that people engaged and interact. If I don't have that, I know I won't get anything else down the line. So based on that, I'll know if my media was good, my integration was good, the creator was good. After that, that's kind of the job of the game.
So the mix of brand awareness is actually pretty important here. And Michael, that's very much to echoing what you said before. If there's no good brand awareness, brand exposure here, the rest, not so important or not as important. Do you have like a North Star KPIs that you're looking at when looking at YouTube or Twitch?
So you said one of the challenges in the beginning of the question. So one of our biggest challenges is trying to have a prediction model early down the line to understand if this influencer is good or not, because we know that a lot doesn't get tracked. but it works in different areas. In different products that I use, for example, we see that we have, for example, for web products, okay, we have, this brand search, okay, grows almost ×3 when we have influencers running.
Wow.
So the funnel all the time, sorry, doesn't always work in a way that the influencer presents the product. Okay, I'm going to download now the product. No, they search, they see, they view. There's the whole, once AppsFlyer once showed it, how the whole funnel is so long and they go through so many areas, especially in e-commerce where they don't even, they don't buy, even sometimes they even just buy in the shop, but they go and learn and listen and see. So from our point of view, we always try and see, how can we predict this influencer can be good or not. I would say another thing that is our value for money, seeing if this influencer is really, the hotter the industry of influencer marketing becomes, the prices are disproportional, and not always does it come back into, ROAS, but
right.
Sometimes it's worth the deal. So taking the risk where we can and where we should is also something that we, it's very easy to take a risk on 2,000, but what happens when you take a risk on $70,000 influencer? And if he, fails? Once we had an influencer for $30,000, it worked amazingly and returned 200% in the same day without tracking. And then the next 2 weeks, we did someone for 130, and she brought almost $12,000. So that was not an easy,
not an easy day in the office.
It was a scar. We have a scar from that. So I never take such big risks. But in the end, right. It's a lot of, no guts, no glory with this influencer marketing area. But I can say that the prices have gone so crazy that you cannot always understand.
I love the point that you said that one of the indicators is just how search surges when there's a good influencer, doing his job. When you're looking at, influencer marketing, or you're looking at social media and definitely YouTube and Twitch, do you have, are you looking at the same KPIs that you look at as with Google and Facebook, or are you looking at different type of KPIs for success?
It's yes and no, because yes, as I said, we are always looking for ROAS, and we are always concentrated. So we would like to have a return of our investment. But on the other hand, we also look for CPI for our another channels, and sometimes we can get smaller ROAS exactly on influencers channel, but as our CPI falls, we can buy cheaper, and our ROAS for the other channels will grow up. So in total, we win, and it's an impact of bloggers, of influencers.
It's great points, and I think it comes down to, we're still, critically important for us, the brand value, the brand, awareness through the audiences, using different channels and different communities to really hone in that messaging beyond the generic video ads, but still be able to look at KPIs, right? And sort of understand either direct or indirect success.
Yes.
I know that we can talk about this, the entire day, but we're limited in time, and I wanted to ask the organizer, do we have some questions from the audience out there?
Hello. Back to you. Thank you very much, guys, for a wonderful panel and for covering up so many aspects of working with the influencer marketing. Actually, it was really detailed and wise. Thank you very much. Dear audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat by the stream window. Sadly, we don't have time to do them right now online, but I'm sure that you guys will be happy to jump in right after the lecture, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you very much for joining us now. It was fantastic to have you in the studio, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you. Wonderful panel.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks.